Perfect. Thank you. So, good morning. A beautiful morning. And yes, there's not a lot of us here, but as Max says, we carry the load for all of us and we stand together. And my message this morning is actually aimed at a lot of our new people. So the great thing is that our messages are recorded. And so this will be able to be historical and something for people to be able to look back on, because I want to set a context today. And I guess it's a continuation of how we're doing things recently. And so that's what I'd like to talk about. It's not very long, so you can just relax and enjoy. Have a great morning together. So, as I say, a lot of people, our newer people, may not be familiar with the context of what we're learning and the focus of where our community is going. So I would just like to put that in context this morning and give a bit of summary of my thoughts about where we are right now and how this relates to us, but also an overview to, before I start a series of talks on the Bible, which I will give a few times during this year. So to start, my thoughts. What I've loved in the past weeks is how collaboration and unity and oneness has become very evident in the messages. And so no longer is it just a one-off message that somebody comes and actually gives a talk or speaks about. It's a continuation of where another left off and of where we are. So I'll give you a few examples of that. In Mark Gilbert's message a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, he played an excerpt of what Mary had spoken about before and referenced Max and Kevin's message in worship as well. So it's like everything is becoming combined. Everybody's taking note of each other and we're moving together. Last week, Kevin spoke about connecting with Mareta before actually preparing his message on prayer, because he values her contribution on prayer. And so there's all just little examples. In previous weeks, Max has been talking about the importance of our connection to the head, and which made me look back at a communion message I had given on the 30th of October 2022. So it's quite a while ago now, which I believe has great relevance for now too. And so here's an excerpt of that message. Briefly, it was about something that had stood out to me and that Max had said in one of the messages, and it was about leadership. And that a leader must first be able to be a follower and learn to be a follower before they can become a leader, because out of that comes leadership once you learn how to follow well. And so to put that at the highest level, Jesus gave us the perfect examples to follow. In John 5:19, so Jesus explained, I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He does only what he sees the Father doing. Whatever the Father does, the Son also does. And in John 8:28, so Jesus said, when you have lifted up the Son of Man on the cross, then you will understand that I am he. I do nothing on my own, but say only what the Father taught me. As Christians, we all aspire to follow the example of Jesus. And I think we all sort of, well, that's a given. We are Christians, so we follow Christ. That's what we think. So can we say that we are leaders because we follow Christ? Well, on one hand, the Bible tells us that we will be ruling and reigning in the heavens. But just because we can say we are Christians and therefore follow Christ, does that make us leaders because we follow Christ? So does that make us get to a position of being able to rule and reign? I think there's more to it. And I think there's more for us to learn in the following process than we can call until we can call ourselves leaders, before we can call ourselves leaders. So we're all members of Generation E Church. At Generation E, we have certain values and things we're working towards achieving, such as tender responses to our own and others' weakness, because no one is perfect. Bringing things into the light and being able to talk about difficult situations when they arise, working things out, engaging with and embracing our local community, etc. And one thing that has been highlighted recently is this oneness and moving forward as one. That's my little thing that I've put in today. And so our leaders in Generation E are Max and Mary. In our context, connection to the head means a committed and authentic connection to Max and Mary. Following Max and Mary doesn't mean losing my unique identity that God gave me and becoming someone else. It does mean gaining an understanding of what God's plan is for this community and being willing to work with them to fulfill God's plan. So I ask questions like, do I understand God's plan for our community? Do I fully flow and participate in this plan under Max and Mary's leadership? Do I align myself with Max and Mary's leadership? Can I follow them? So maybe good questions for all of us to contemplate. So that was, as I say, October 2022. So back to the present. I think since then, we've come a long way further in terms of leadership development and connection to the head. And I do see that happening on a wider scale everywhere, which is so exciting. And I'll ask you to bear this in mind towards the end of today when we look at why does the unity and moving forward as one matter. So I'd like to give you some context of now where we're studying with our study of the Bible. We're currently studying the Book and Bible College series through Awakening Bible College, the book called The Unseen Realm by Dr. Michael Heiser. He's a world-renowned biblical scholar whose work is based on what the Bible says, not what it doesn't say or what people think it says or would like to make it say. He just focuses on the words. What does it say? In the ancient Hebrew and Greek, as it's written, what's what he bases it on, before it was translated into English, because some critical meanings and truth have been missed or misunderstood during the translation process. And this has resulted in the misinterpretation of meanings and parts of the Bible that has been carried through the ages. So in recent years, with the advent of computers and technology and the ability to study multiple translations of the Bible, together with the ancient original Hebrew and Greek texts, it has been possible to uncover these inconsistencies. And Dr. Heiser's life work was about discovering the true readings and meanings as they were originally written and intended to be understood. And it's not only him, there are some others that have also done it, but we have focused on his teaching, which is actually, we believe, very concise and consistent, and he has reasons for everything. So, it's pretty good. So I liken what he's done to this. So here is a beautiful, where is one? Yeah, this one. Here's a beautiful flower. Now that's been dried, but it pretty much looks similar to what the original flower looks, and it is still the original flower. All of these are original dried flowers. There's nothing not authentic in there. So what actually happens is to preserve flowers over the generations, people have dried them. And traditionally, if we wanted to have flat flowers, we've dried them in books, heavy books, in pages of books. And we've still got some here because Bronwyn used to love to dry flowers. And so she's done some beautiful drying. I'll just find a few that I can show you. Here we go. So here are a couple of dried flowers that Bronwyn did for us. You can see a beautiful daisy, which was probably once white or pink, and it's now brown. Can you all see that? Okay, great. So that was a traditional way of drying. Now it's still a flower, but the color is different. We then moved on to, you can also use a proper flower press, and you can get the same kind of result, except you can do it multiple times and probably a little better quality. And then you can move on to a microwave version. And a microwave version actually gives us an instant press in a couple of minutes. But the great thing is that it actually preserves the color, and it looks very much like the original flower, okay, the color of the flower. And so when we look at that, here's some more beautiful bright colors, as you can see. So that looks a little bit more like the original flower that God created. Even though the brown ones are still the flower, they don't have everything in them anymore that God had originally put into them. So while both of these methods might work, what we've discovered is a lot of the original colors of the flowers are lost this way. Some flowers end up looking brown and faded. So Dr. Heiser talks a lot about context. And so that's what I just want to give you. I just want you to think about this way. So as we've gone along, computers and technology have helped us to actually find out stuff that we couldn't find out before because it was just too much work, too much referencing, etc., not possible to do. So Dr. Heiser's work, in combination with being able to use the technology that we have, he's been able to discover a lot of things that were missing from our understanding. And so it's a little bit like this flower press. If you can just follow the process, the old technology we could still use and still produce beautiful results, but the new technology, we can go faster, but we can also produce something very much like the original. Okay, so keeping the color. So keeping the Bible, what the Bible said is what Dr. Heiser's brought to us. He's brought us back to what did the Bible really say, not the English translations of what people may or may not have tried to interpret it as. Okay, so hope you got my little example. Okay, so interpreting the Bible in the context of which it was written. So rather than filter the Bible through creeds dating from the 17th and 18th centuries, or even the period of early Christianity, the Bible's actual context is the time in which it was written. And the era stretching from the second millennium BC to the 1st century AD is when the Bible was written. Okay, that means we need to understand the times in that the biblical writer was living during this ancient time, to span in the ancient Near East and Eastern Mediterranean, the geography of where they were. Okay, so it's really important for us to actually be able to understand, not just look at the Bible from what we might have been taught and what our various previous religions may have been or whatever. It's actually, what does the Bible say? And just having a look at that, but having the context of that it was written when it was written, and we need to be able to try and get our heads into that time. So we must be able to put ourselves in that time. And then there's the context, there's other things that affect that as well. Once we understand that and put that the context, then there are overlaying context. There's the worldview, there's a religious context, there are cultural contexts, and there are literary contexts. And then you get to words, there are even word level contexts. So there's a lot of things to understand about context before we can actually begin to read the Bible with an understanding of exactly what it says. So we almost have to get rid of some of our filters before we even start, but that's an important one. What interests me is that both Dr. Heiser and also Anne Hamilton, who most of you are familiar with, we have many of her books at the back, and you've heard many people talk about her. And we recently had a wonderful discussion in a session with her at our ladies' gathering last month. And both Dr. Heiser and Anne Hamilton have studied not just the Bible, but they have other literature pertaining to the times in which the Bible was written. So the Jewish Torah, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, so many things that they've actually opened up and to look at. Don't just focus on the Bible. We need to know more about the time so that we can understand the context of what was written. And so they've opened our eyes to lots of amazing things that we never knew about. And so, yeah, Anne's example of Exodus in the Torah and in the Bible, a book that both share, and looking at the English translation of the Bible, much was missed out from the original Hebrew as it was written, and particularly in the context of the important roles which women played. And I'm sure we'll talk about that another time, but there are lots of things that just draw our attention and think, wow, there's so many things we actually didn't know. And so then once we can understand the context, we can apply the lessons to our own lives today. And I guess that's the important thing, being able to apply the lessons to our lives today. Until we actually understand the context, we can't really effectively do that. We might be able to take a verse here or a verse there and think, well, that applies to me or whatever, but maybe the big picture, when we understand the full picture, it's not quite what we have heard or believed that it said. So something which I can relate to in my own life, in 2008, Trevor and I were given a prophetic word by members of the prophetic sector of Congress WBN, the organization that our community was affiliated to at the time. And that word I have kept and continue to refer to periodically, even 16 years later. It's always easily accessible to me. I don't have to dig for it. It's on the main page of my Dropbox folder. One of the things which was said to me was that I had a bit of a struggle with the Congress language. Now, that I should break down the words and study their meanings to gain greater clarity. And then from that would come activation in that area. And anyone who was in Congress will remember all the complex words we had. Some made up words, some all sorts of crazy things, but lots that had an extreme, very definite explanation. Probably not a crazy word, that's probably not the right explanation, but a word that had a very specific meaning, and it didn't mean anything else. And so it was actually really important for us to understand what that meant so that we could understand what Dr. Woodruff was talking about or what he was trying to get us to understand. So what I've realized is that that word wasn't just for then, it's relevant for now too. So when I'm going through Dr. Heiser's course, what I'm finding is I'm going through some words that we're learning about in the context and stuff, and I've actually got to go back. I sort of know what those words mean, but I can't say that I precisely know. So I have to go back and I have to go through every single word and or the words that I feel are relevant and that I need to know. And so I'm doing that exact same thing again. So learning what that word means, what's the deeper meaning, what's the real deep understanding of it. And so going back to the word, it said, that's how I can become activated. So I have taken this, and so that's how I can become activated in this area, which in my mind means that that's how I will gain sight. And so sight leads to activation. So that's my thoughts. Another part of that word was for us to stay open and flexible. God doesn't want us to get into old people's mentalities or positions. My thoughts are, what could some old people's mentalities be? So maybe inflexible, maybe don't want to learn anything new, maybe tired. And then it goes on to say that's not what God has for us or our community. So this is my words again, or our community, because our word also says we need to and allow God to and continue to make us vibrant, young, and dynamic. So what does that say to me? That says to me, it's really easy to fall into same old, just get comfortable. Yep, heard that before. And even as Max was saying, yep, come and enjoy the morning, the fellowship, and walk away and forget about church until next Sunday, and don't actually continue and think about, what we need to do with this. So I guess that, and a reminder is that a word for us in our community can apply across the body of the community for all. So it's not just for one, it can be for all of us. So as Max was saying this morning, if there's just something to take away, just think about, is there anything that I could be having a mentality that is not going to make me vibrant and dynamic? So that's just a thought about that. So we need to be prepared to change our old thinking, even about our current understanding of the Bible, flexibility to accept and embrace new ways of thinking, spiritual flexibility. That's it. And so again, I just remind you about this little picture, if you can keep that picture in mind, because that's exactly what it is. Flexibility to take on something new, to try something new, and be surprised that the results may be far better than before. So that's it. Okay, so continuing with context. Dr. Hauser explains how in the unseen world, the unseen realm, God presides over a council of lesser divine beings known as the divine council, in order to accomplish God's purposes in the supernatural realm. The divine council functions as the heavenly counterpart of humanity on the earth. So Yahweh, the Godhead at the top, he's the Lord of the council, the heavenly host. There's no one like him. Sons of God is a tier rank term for the other members of the divine council or other divine beings. These are gods with a small g, okay? So I would like to reference the biblical reference, and this is a lot of Dr. Hauser's work is based on this, and this is why I'm starting with this context. The biblical reference is Psalm 82, and it says, verse 1, God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. In the midst of the gods is G-O-D-S, small gods, which are the other beings. So the other important context that Dr. Hauser uses, and you'll likely have heard people talk about the Deuteronomy 32 worldview, and many people may not know what that is. So after the people built the Tower of Babel, God chose Israel for himself, but he disinherited the other nations, and he placed them under the authority of the members of his divine council. And it's actually really important to know that, so that the context of Dr. Hauser's work makes sense. And Deuteronomy 32:8 says, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. So that's what Deuteronomy 32:8 says. However, many of those divine beings in the divine council became corrupt and later rebelled against God and led the nations they supervised astray in idolatry. So that's where all the chaos and all the issues happened. Okay. One of them, there are 3 rebellions, which we will go through another time. So yeah, that's where we'll hear about, and again, in future messages, we'll talk about the chaos dragons and waters and the sea and what that actually represents. So we'll learn about how the supernatural worldview and the Bible intersects, and how God looks at people, at us, his human family, and the relationship he wants with us. It's what the Bible is about. It's the way God wanted things initially, and it's the way that it will be at the end. So I'd like to remind you about unity and moving forward as one, as important for us in our community context and our connection to the head, because at the end, this is God's plan. And I'm going to go through a little bit of this. The end of the chaos and the restoration of Eden. The original plan where all peoples are one. The end of the division between the nations and their separation from God. In the end, everything is brought full circle. We replace the rebellious sons of God. We are the reconstituted council of God. We are the new children of God. That's the way that things are going to end. So it's important to have that context, I guess, in learning, because sometimes when you hear so much, there's so much in the Bible and so much about the story that sometimes you can just get stuck. You don't know where it's going. So as I say, I'm giving you an overview because then we're going to delve down in weeks, days, months, whenever it is to come. We're actually going to delve down into the deeper things, but it's very important to have the context of what this is about. So Revelation 1, 1:5 and 1:7 identifies Jesus as the ruler of kings on earth and signals that all tribes of the earth will see him coming with the clouds. All tribes, and I think that's really important for us. So unity, again, oneness, we're thinking about all of that. Multiculturalism, right around the world, everyone is included. And there'll be more about that too. In time, we'll talk about Genesis and 1 to 3. There's so many new things that Mary and I are actually just looking at the moment that come to light. So as the more that we do these incredible studies, the more that there is, the more that you find. So that's really great. Okay, so the ultimate destiny of the nations and their kings as worshippers in the New Jerusalem. That is what Revelation is. And so this is what Dr. Heiser says, and I'll read it to you because he just says it in such a beautiful way. He says, these chapters, this is Revelation we're talking about, need to be read as the culmination of the reversal of the Tower of Babel rebellion, because that's what they are. Babel is both judged and restored. Again, this is the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord has two sides of the coin. The wicked are judged and the righteous are vindicated. The nations, again, their gods will be judged and destroyed. Those who follow them will be judged and destroyed. And those who don't, those who turn to the true God, will be part of this family, part of his family. And that process, that goal, is already in process. It's the already but not yet. And God, Max has taught on that quite a bit, that already but not yet. The already is it's begun at the Pentecost and the reclaiming of the nations. He, Jesus, will return, and the nations and their gods will be judged. But he, that's Jesus, welcomes believers. He welcomes anyone from any nation to believe. It's an Old Testament vision. It all reaches its end, and believers are part of that. Again, from every tribe. He specifically says that from every tribe, every nation, Jew, Gentile. It doesn't matter. Believers are the conquering children of Yahweh. And that goes for males and females too. We, since the death of Christ, we all can hear God for ourselves. We can all hear, and we don't need the covering over of anybody to be able to hear. We can hear for ourselves. Revelation 2, it says at verse 26, and Jesus is speaking here, the one who conquers and who keeps my works until the end, to him I will give authority over the nations, and he, the overcomer, the one who overcomes, will rule them with a rod of iron, as when the earthen pots are broken in pieces, even as I myself, that's Jesus, have received authority from my Father, and I will give that person who overcomes the morning star. And there'll be further discussion about that morning star, which is just so beautiful. It really speaks to me. And sometimes, particularly in the winter when it's dark, when I wake up, I look out and I can see the morning star. So that's a very very precious thing to me, but we'll talk about that another time. Um, so, um, so the morning star is a messianic symbol, and Jesus is saying of all believers, those who overcome, those who believe to the end, they overcome. So we believe to the end, we overcome. That they're going to be put over the nations in authority, and they're going to be co-messiahs. And this is the part I'd like to focus on as well, just how they're going to rule the nations like I would rule them. That's what Jesus said. Their authority is not going to be questioned. I'm going to share my messianic authority with them. That's Revelation 3. But I want to just talk about the family part of it, and I'll go through that in a minute. But I want to just go back to this conqueror and talk about this a little bit more. The verb nikeo is, we get Nike or Nike, as some people say it, from, the sports, Nike, the sports brand. Well, that actually means conqueror. So this might help you remember it because it's a sports brand. It means conqueror, to conquer, and is variously translated. These are the translations of that: Nike, Nikeo, overcome, conquer, be victorious, military conquest, victory in athletic competitions, and faithfulness amid opposition. And that's the thing to the last one, faithfulness amid opposition, is the thing that piqued my interest. Faithfulness amid opposition. Apocalypse, the victory motive, highlights the tension between the earthly and the heavenly perspective on the church's situation in the world. And this is Dr. Haase speaking again now. The apocalypse presents the people of God ironically as conquered conquerors. So just hear that, conquered conquerors who experience present suffering and defeat, yet await ultimate victory. Who is over the nations? Believers. You are. We are co-messiahs. But I just want to go back to that, conquered conquerors. So sometimes we feel we have, a big struggle, and there's lots of things against us. But just remember that we are conquered conquerors. We await ultimate victory. So yeah, that faithfulness amid opposition in the word nikeo or nak. The wicked are judged and the righteous among the Gentiles are in the family of God, and they're put in authority over a perfect world that needs no temple. We don't need a temple, we just have God straight away. Paul in Corinthians 6, Paul is talking about yet another problem in the Corinthian church, and we'll all know this, this one, that one of them is bickering with another, taking each other to court, in other words, just having a conflict with another person. And Paul goes, well, why are you doing this? He says in Corinthians 6:2, do you not know? Why are you busy with these law courts and all these little things? Do you not know that the holy ones, that you believers, you will be judging the world? And so if the world is to be judged by you, are you incompetent to trial trivial cases? And I guess that also just made me think about the importance of us moving forward as one and unity. And if we have conflict or if we have things, one of the values that I actually wrote about in October 2022 was that when we have something, we can actually work through issues. We can actually work through hard things, and we can come to a place where we work them out. And that's a very important thing. And that's part of leadership. Leadership has to address tough things sometimes, and being able to work through them in a way. And that's not just the right thing to do that we know, or having a harmonious life. It's actually the right thing to do according to the Bible. So that's who we are. So yeah, do you not know that you are to judge angels? I'm sure we all know that, that one verse of Corinthians. So within our own tier, children of God, new heaven and new earth, we are siblings in a family. And this is what I want to go back to. This is why we need to think about this oneness and working together and being connected to the head. We are all equal status under our Father. Think of it as partnership, like it was supposed to be in Eden, co-partners. And isn't it odd that Paul uses that term of believers, co-laborers, co-partners? He prefers, again, family terminology and co-partner, partnering terminology. So what we do now should be already a reflection on what we're thinking about. So my thoughts are that this is why we need to be in unity and oneness and moving as forward as one now. So that's all I have for you today. And I hope that's given you some things to think about. And I would like to ask two people if they would like to come and help with communion, please. Thank you, Rachel and Alex. Thank you very much. And I would just like to, we've got a beautiful song to play shortly.